Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dome9 webinar, Cloud Security and Compliance Best Practices for Financial Organizations. My name is Thelen Blum, and I will be your host for today's webinar. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Dome9, and I'm here with Alex Kostorfine, Cloud Solutions Architect for Dome9 Security. A couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our website afterwards. All attendees are in listen-only mode. We will close with Q&A at the end of the session. If you would like to ask a question, please type it in the questions window of GoToWebinar, and Alex will address as many questions as possible, time permitting. We also have uploaded a handout on the Dome9 ARC platform. Additionally, on our website, there is a guide that I encourage you to download titled The Definitive Guide to Public Cloud Security and Compliance for Financial Services. I will provide the link to this document in the chat window momentarily. Feel free to download this content at any time during the webinar. I want to present a little background on Alex right now before we get started. Alex Kostorfine is a Cloud Solutions Architect for Dome9 Security. Prior to joining, Alex spent time as a Systems Administrator at Juniper Networks and in sales with OpsClarity and Sumo Logic. In his work at Dome9, Alex has the opportunity to blend his technical and sales background while working with customers and prospects and championing a successful and secure transition to the public cloud with Dome9's adoption. Alex holds a BA from San Jose State University and a certified CCSP and AWS Solutions Architect professional. Now we'll launch into our webinar discussion today. As of May 2017, according to a report from the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, the DTCC, which provides financial transaction and data processing services for the global financial industry, cloud computing has reached a tipping point. Today, financial service companies can benefit from the capabilities and cost efficiencies of the cloud, which include security, scalability, resiliency, recoverability, and cost of applications that have moved ahead of on-premise data centers. Banks, hedge funds, asset managers, insurance firms, and other players in the financial services ecosystem should seek out technologies that meet compliance and security needs, but also enable agility and flexibility. Working with the right partner can enhance an organization's security posture. In the 60-minute webinar, Dome9 will explain how financial institutions can successfully maintain control over their security and compliance when moving to the public cloud with a cloud-based platform that provides three key tools: network security visibility, automated compliance and governance, and enforcement with active protection. Without further ado, I will now pass the ball to Alex. Let's get started.
Great. Thanks, Ellen. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining on this webinar this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are located. So just as a quick agenda and the high level of how this webinar is going to go, I've got some slides I want to go through today just to kind of set the stage for what it is we're talking about, especially in the context of financial services. What does security in the cloud mean? What are some of the challenges that are being presented? And then obviously, where is Dome9 positioned to help you with those challenges? From there, what we're going to do is we're going to spend the majority of our time actually in the Dome9 UI, getting away from slides and really showing you, using Dome9, how we can help you out with this security and visibility challenge as you're running workloads in the public cloud. So as Stella mentioned, the DTCC published this report back in May that highlights these different benefits that are coming out of cloud computing. And I assume that none of this is particularly shocking for most of you here, but the important thing to note is that while the cloud can help us be more secure, be more scalable, and lower our costs, that doesn't mean just because I spin up an AWS account, I've done any of those things. We have the opportunity to be very secure, to have incredible scalability and all of these sorts of things. But it takes effort, and it takes money, and it takes knowledge, and just because we're in one of these clouds, it doesn't mean we check these boxes. And so we can do it, but we need to take this more seriously in order to actually make sure that what we are doing within these clouds is the best way that we could be running our business. So in the context of security, the three main challenges that we're really seeing companies facing is around visibility, understanding what's actually going on. If I just have one account running workloads in one region with a handful of instances, visibility might not be a huge challenge. But as my environment grows and I'm running in multiple regions and multiple accounts and even multiple clouds, these challenges around visibility become exponentially harder to address. And then with that visibility, being able to then meet my compliance and governance requirements is a huge challenge, because if I don't have this visibility and a single place to come in and actually make sure that everything is running well, then I can't prove this out very quickly either. And then from there, once I've got my visibility and I made sure that everything is nice and compliant, from there we need to make sure that things stay that way. Just because at one point in time my application was up and everything was secure and I was compliant with whatever frameworks I need to adhere to, doesn't mean that a year from now that's still going to be the case. And so we really need to make this an ongoing process as opposed to a one-shot deal. And within that too, there's the Advanced Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, ANPR. And ANPR was announced last year, and as this is coming out, basically what they're saying here is that for financial, not just financial institutions, but everybody within this financial ecosystem needs to start taking security more seriously. I mean, we've seen this from breaches from things like Equifax. We need to make sure that this data is secure, and obviously this goes beyond just our standard host-based security and cloud infrastructure security, but we need to make sure that we have solutions in place at every part of the stack to make sure that our data is secure and we are not having any breaches. So, how does Dome9 help out with that? So within Dome9, we are 100% focused on public cloud infrastructure security. So we ourselves work in AWS, Azure, and Google. And across that, we couple different solutions on how we can help you out, get this better visibility, and make sure that these workloads running in these public clouds are secure. It's not just around network security. We're going to be talking, once we get into the demo, about a tool we have called Clarity, which is all around getting a better understanding of what's exposed to the public internet, getting that visibility and making sure that things are configured properly. But beyond that, there's still a lot more that makes a secure infrastructure besides just the network configurations. We need to make sure that all my IAM settings are set up properly and that I don't have any any access keys that are posted up on GitHub, and I don't have too many admins, and that everybody only has the least amount of rights that they need. And then as we touched on before too, we also need to make sure that things are compliant. Getting visibility and making sure that my network is configured properly is one piece of compliance. But beyond that, we also need to do things like make sure our S3 buckets aren't exposed and RDS is encrypted, and maybe even tagging policies to make sure that I know exactly what is going on with all of these instances within my account. All of these sorts of things are what we're going to be touching on today once we get into that demo. All right, one more note on ANPR. Again, it is a whole suite of challenges that are going to be presented to these to the financial industry. It's not just around being compliant with something like NIST or CSF or PCI. These are all good and important things that you should be doing to make sure that, that our environment is secure. But again, just a point-in-time check of NIST and a point-in-time check of something like PCI doesn't mean everything is good to go. We need to have this across our whole entire stack and make sure this is happening on an ongoing basis. All right. And I'm not going to spend too much time on the product slides because, again, we are going to be actually looking at the full demo. But just as a teaser here, this is a kind of a high-level screenshot of what Clarity is going to be providing from a network visibility and security group configuration standpoint. What Clarity does is it allows us to visualize what is going on within our networks from a security group standpoint, what is exposed to the public internet, and actually what that is affecting too. All right. So from there, again, we're going to take this beyond Clarity and beyond just the visualization side of things and talk about compliance, because compliance is not only just things like PCI, but again, beyond PCI, we also need to be able to customize these different checks. Just because I'm PCI compliant doesn't mean there aren't other compliance standards and frameworks that might have been other internal checks that you guys are needing to adhere to. And so within DOM 9, what we're going to see here is that just having pre-canned content is really the tip of the iceberg. From there, what's really important is being able to take that and then easily model it to be custom tailored to what's going on within our environment. So we'll be talking through that. And additionally, one of the strong capabilities within DOM 9 is that a lot of what we're talking about here and what we're going to be looking at today is looking at a live environment, what's actually configured right now. But beyond that too, within Clarity and within this compliance engine, what we can do is we can load up CloudFormation templates into these systems as well. And so what that allows us to do is it allows us to understand what the current or what the state will be of my environment if these templates are deployed, but before they're actually live in any sort of environment. So we can really shorten release times on any back and forth as far as security issues and misconfigurations, and really make sure that everything is configured properly before it's deployed anywhere. Skip this. All right, we'll talk a little bit about continuous compliance and how, again, it's not just a one-off check, but then from there, how we need to make sure that it is secure on an ongoing basis. From there, time permitting, we're going to talk through tamper protection and region lock. Tamper protection and region lock take this beyond that compliance side of things and really move more into the active enforcement side of DOM 9. Just because I can see on an ongoing basis what the current security state is of my environment, that's good, but at the same time, I don't want to have to go in and always be managing everything within my environment. If I have a network that is configured properly and everything is scoped down to just what I need it to be open to, well, then we want to keep it that way. And that's exactly what tamper protection and region lock are going to allow us to do. Let's get our security groups configured properly, and then let's not have to deal with it from there. Let's let DOM 9 do that heavy lifting of enforcement. All right, and then this is the last slide I've got before we get into the demo, but it's really just that high-level overview of what we're looking at, and this really encompasses a lot of those slides that we just talked about. Again, we're pulling in data from Amazon, from Microsoft, and from Google, and we're pulling this information all directly from these providers' APIs. And so what that allows us to do is when we hook into any new environment, we know what kind of questions we're going to ask AWS. And we know the general structure of the information that they're going to provide back to us, which allows us to build up this content that I'm going to be showing you all automatically. It's easy to set up, but then from there, there's no big ongoing maintenance or anything like that you need to do. It just works. It's all hooked up. And again, so we're going to be talking about Clarity, in-place remediation, tamper protection, region lock, and compliance and governance today. All right. So from here, let's actually take a look at DOM 9. So when I log into DOM 9, this is the first landing page that I'm going to see. In this case, we can see that I've got 2 AWS accounts, 1 Azure, and 1 Google project all hooked up here. And as I link up any new environment and I'm trying to really get an understanding of what's going on and trying to make sure that my environment is configured properly, first place that I always recommend to go is over to Clarity. Again, Clarity is all about helping you visualize and understand what is going on within my security group configurations. Because again, coming back to that first slide that we were talking to, the cloud gives us the opportunity to be extremely secure. Security groups are a fantastic invention, and when they are configured properly and very, very specifically, they're amazing, and our security is great. But if I have one of those environments that is configured so granularly and everything is locked down just right, getting visibility and actually making sure that things are configured properly is a huge challenge, and so that's what Clarity sets out to solve. So the first thing I get here is when I drill into, in this case, my prod account in my Oregon region, is I get a very high-level overview of what is going on within my region. All of these different boxes are VPCs. All of these lines are peering connections being made between the VPCs. And if you're doing anything with Direct Connect, we'll show you that as well so we can see where it's hooking into. But from here, when we go and we drill into one of the VPCs is where the heart of Clarity really lies. And that's because what Clarity is doing right now is it's analyzing all of the different security groups within this VPC, and then it analyzed all of the rules within all of these security groups. And so from here, after it finished that analysis, what it did was it categorized them into one of 4 swim lanes here based on how permissive the rules are within these different security groups. And again, this information is pulled directly from AWS. And all of these swim lanes, their meanings are static, and we'll talk to them in just a sec what they actually mean. But because we're pulling this information directly from these providers, and because these swim lanes, we already know what they mean, we can draw a diagram like this for you of your environment with literally 0 configuration once you set up your permissions within Dome 9. And it will continuously be up to date. And so that's great now because I can come into any environment and really start understanding what my exposure level is, if I have anything anything sensitive that might be more open than it needs to be, what is able to talk to what and on what ports. And then from there, now that we've got this visual representation of the current state of my environment, you can start asking those kind of informed questions about what's going on and what do I need to do in order to make sure that this environment is configured perfectly. So before I start doing any troubleshooting, we need to understand what these swim lanes actually mean. So first of all, anything in the external zone, these are all IPs, ranges, or collections of individual IPs that are being referenced in these security groups. And then everything from DMZ over, all of these gray blobs are all different security groups. Anything that's sitting here in the DMZ means that we have one or more ports in these security groups that are wide open to the public internet. Partially open means that I have some public internet exposure, but not that full 0000/0 of the DMZ. Effectively internal means that the security group has rules that would allow us to take in traffic from the public internet, but the assets that are attached to these security groups don't have a public IP. So because of that, I'm kind of theoretically able to take in traffic, but logically not, which is why it's broken into its own swim lane here. And then anything in the internal zone means that I only have rules that allow us to take in traffic from other internal sources. So as I come into any new environment then, and I'm trying to understand what's going on and where I need to prioritize my troubleshooting, as you can imagine, the DMZ is a good place to start because this is where kind of the lowest hanging fruits of misconfigurations might lie and where the highest impact of security misconfigurations would be as well. One more thing to note is that in the top right-hand corner of these security groups, there's a number. Sometimes there's not. And that's showing me the number of assets that are attached to these different security groups. So for instance, if I was drilling through this partially open swim lane here, Common SG has 6 assets attached, whereas App2, Application Security Group, has none. From here, I can say I should probably start doing my troubleshooting on Common SG because if there's any misconfigurations here, it's affecting more things than this App2 security group. This is something I should probably go and clean up just as a best practice and to keep my environment tidy. But even if this is wide open, it's not actually affecting things like this Common SG would. But in drilling now through this DMZ, both of these security groups just have one asset attached, and so I can start clicking through either. And now when I click in on one of these security groups, I get a lot more context over here on the right-hand side around what's actually going on. Again, from the DMZ, I knew that there was one or more ports wide open to the public internet, and this one told me there's something attached. But now over here I get my answer. That one thing that's attached here is an ELB. And then my rules here for the security group are color-coded to the swim lanes they would belong to by themselves. So from here I can say that 80 and 143 are both only scoped to take in traffic from other internal sources, whereas 443, it's red of the DMZ. Before even clicking in here, I know that this is that rule that is wide open to the public internet. And so looking at this and seeing an ELB wide open on 443, this is probably not actually a security misconfiguration. This could very well be part of my expected architecture, but that's okay because Clarity is not just around showing you that the sky is falling and I have all these misconfigurations within my environment, but it's really around giving you a better understanding, period, about what's going on within our environment. If an auditor wants to come in and get a network diagram of what is going on and what can talk to what, that's that. If you have a new hire who comes in who's trying to digest what's actually going on within this account so he can kind of build that mental model and ramp up quicker, this can still be that great place to go. So we've called LB Web good because it's just got our ELB in it. And so we're left with the other security group in the DMZ, which is this default. And I already know there's going to be problems. Within this default security group, I shouldn't even be using it as a best practice. I should really see it over here in the internal zone. I should see it without anything attached and without any rules. So from seeing it in the DMZ and with something attached, I know that there's going to be some problems here I need to deal with. And so from here, when I go and I click in, now I get that context. In this case, what I can see is that I don't have an ELB attached to the security group, but instead it's an instance called DB1. And then again, my red rule here states that it's not 443 that's wide open, but instead it's SSH. Now, obviously, in this case, if I have a database that's sitting here wide open on SSH, this is a huge security misconfiguration, an issue that we need to address. And it's something that we really came to just by clicking through the two different security groups within this DMZ. And sometimes when I'm going through this and talking with prospects and customers, it's called out that, okay, this is a nice demo and this is nice to see, but it's not always reality. I don't have a database sitting wide open on SSH, so therefore I'm not sure if this is still applicable to me. But unfortunately, this diagram actually represents a lot more of reality than I think people realize or would hope to expect. One of our biggest customers, when they came to Dome9, they just finished up their PCI audit. And as part of a PCI audit, you would expect that when they come to Dome9, things should be pretty well configured. They've gone through, they've made sure that everything is nice and scoped down, and there shouldn't be too many surprises. But as we went through this and we linked up a new environment, and Clarity again was drawn automatically, what we saw was that we had a whole entire Kafka cluster that was sitting wide open in the DMZ that no one was aware of even after PCI audit. So this actually really does represent what reality is for an unfortunate amount of people that are running large environments within the cloud. And Clarity with that can really give you that quick understanding of what's going on so that we can cut down on the time it takes to troubleshoot, really make sure that we're secure, and then from here make sure on an ongoing basis that, that everything is still as tightly configured as I would hope and expect. So from here, we found that this default security group has a problem. We need to go and address it. But from here, what we need to do is we need to take this a step further and actually get some context around what's going on within this security group. And so from here, what I can do is I can go to Open in Central, and this is going to open up a new tab which is scoped down to just the security group in question. Because seeing this default security group is open is a very important first step in troubleshooting. But now from this page, I have a lot more context of what's going on within my environment. I've got a little more information about the ports that are open. And if I have read-write permissions enabled within Dome9, I can actually make changes to these security groups right from here. Got more information about the instance that that's DB1 that is attached to the security group. And then additionally, I've got this history over here on the left. And this history is showing me not only changes of things that were done within Dome9, but additionally, we're pulling in context from CloudTrail. And so what that allows us to do is find these issues within Clarity and uncover potential misconfigurations, drill into the security group to start getting that more depth of what's going on and what I might need to do to fix it. But then within this history now, I can add in another layer here, which is not only what is the current state, but how did I get here? In this case, I can see that yesterday there was a change to the security group where SSH was opened up, and it looks like I need to go yell at Chuck and see why he's opening up these ports and maybe why this database is even attached to the default security group in the first place. All right, so from here within Clarity, what we're looking at within these different security groups is configurations. what ports are open, what are closed, what can talk to what, and even what assets are attached. But there's another side to this which is pretty interesting as well, and that's the context of VPC flow logs. What we've really seen from the majority of the people that we talk to is that people aren't getting the value out of flow logs that they should. And that's really because although there's a ton of important information within flow logs, the formatting and the way to actually get information out of them is terrible. The formatting is super non-intuitive, and so especially if I'm not pumping into something like a Sumo Logic or a Splunk for their pre-built content and the parsing and all of that, there's no easy way to get information out of what's going on within my environment. But we think that's a problem because there's a ton of important information within these flow logs if we can just unlock it and do it in an easy way. So from here, I check this box, and the first thing I get is these little red legends in the bottom right-hand corners of my security group. And what this is showing me is proportionally how much traffic is being dropped on these different security groups. And that keeps with the theme of clarity as far as how much direction can I give you in 0 to 1 clicks. From here, I can say that App1 servers is dropping less traffic than DB servers because this little red legend is less full. So from here, especially because this is a security group that is sitting here in the internal zone, maybe I want to start troubleshooting on DB servers because this is, this is concerning. And so from here, when I go and I click in on the security group, I get my flow logs. And for those of you that have been a part of kind of the native flow log formatting, I hope you'll agree with me that this formatting is a lot easier to read and easier to digest than it is from the way that AWS outputs it. But beyond just having this, this data output in a nice table, by having it within this view of clarity, we've got a pretty interesting combination of data. Because up top here, I've got clarity as we've been talking about, my different swim lanes and what can talk to what. Within DB servers, as I've clicked on it, I've got that context of what's actually going on, what instances are attached to this security group, and what do my rules say should be happening. But then on top of that, I've got my flow logs here, which takes us from theory and into reality. Not just what traffic should be going through, but what is and what isn't. And this is great for not only being able to uncover security misconfigurations. If I'm dropping a bunch of traffic, is it because there's some sort of east-west type of attack going on? Or even operationally, is there just a misconfiguration that I need to deal with? Is something trying to talk to DB servers, but I never set up that rule to allow that traffic in? All those kinds of things we can go and we can answer very easily by having these 3 panels of information together. So from here, though, you get in and we take a look at what's going on within this VPC. We see that there's some problems, some things are good, some things are bad. But now I need to go and I need to take this to that compliance side of things that we've been talking about. Diagrams are great for getting an understanding of our environment and kind of building a mental model of what's good and what might not be. But now we go into the compliance engine, we can take this and turn it from diagrams into rules. Sometimes I don't need to see a picture in order to know that I don't want SSH wide open. I just want you to tell me whether or not things are okay. So in this case, for our compliance engine, we're going to be talking through our PCI bundle here. We have 76 different checks here that we're running out of the box. And again, some of what we're talking to is the same kind of things that we saw from within Clarity. Don't have SSH wide open. Don't use the default security group. But again, beyond that, there's a lot more that makes up a secure environment that you need to be aware of. Obviously, S3s are the hot topic lately, so we should probably make sure that those aren't going to put us in the news. We want to make sure that people aren't using our root account, and we're rotating access keys. All of these different kinds of things we need to test on to make sure that our environments are secure. And not only am I compliant, but even if there was no compliance frameworks I needed to deal with, that our customers' data is secure. So from here, for this PCI bundle, I'm going to go and I'm going to run it against that same prod account we were talking about. And now from here, what we're doing is we're checking all 76 of these rules against this account. And when I get this report, it's going to be split into 2 high-level overviews, or 2 high-level categories. My top half is more of a summary view. What was my pass-fail ratio? What kind of services did I test on? And even how did individual regions do against that overall average? And then when I scroll down below is where I actually see the results. And again, we can keep talking about things like that SSH example we saw before. In this case, I can see that for my rule that says SSH should not be wide open, I had 231 security groups that I evaluated, and of those, 11 were out of compliance. From here, if I go and I click on expand, I can get that shopping list of those different offending security groups. And then from here, just like we did within Clarity, I can go and I can drill in on any of these security groups to give me that next level of detail. Just having a list of different security groups that might have a problem is important, and it's that first step. But until I drill in and actually get context of what's going on, I haven't really been able to do the full scope of what I need to do. Now in this case, looking at this launch wizard, things already aren't great because it is a launch wizard. But additionally now I can see, yes, SSH is wide open, but it's also the only port that's open on this box. Beyond that too, I've only got one instance attached and it's turned off. And looking at our history, well, nothing's been going on in the last month. Okay, well now from here, I've taken this from, hey, I probably should deal with this launch wizard, and really added that next level of context to know this is really something that should be zeroed out or should be deleted. And from here, we should do kind of take those next steps to figure out why this happened in the first place and how we can prevent these issues in the future. Just to kind of bring it back to the S3 buckets as well. The results seem very similar as well, where we can see something like, hey, we don't want to have our buckets exposed. And now when I go and I open this up, I've got all my different buckets here that I need to go and start troubleshooting to figure out why things are the way they are and make sure that my data is not any more exposed than it needs to be. But as I mentioned, within this compliance engine, within the Dome9 pre-built content, we are always going to be working to give you as much coverage out of the box as possible. And no matter how hard we work, we recognize that we are never going to get you 100% there with pre-built content. Because no matter what, you're always going to have different things that could still very well be configured as best practices and another valid way of doing it, but might be a little bit different than the way that it's been pre-built. And then beyond that, there are things that we're never going to be able to pre-can tests for just because they're very unique to environments. Again, coming back to something like a tagging policy. Pretty much as everyone has some sort of policies that they're trying to adhere to, but everyone's are different. And so what we need to do now is be able to take this PCI bundle and customize it in a way that really makes it much more relevant to what I am doing within my environment. So from here, first thing I need to do is I need to clone this bundle. And that's because everything from PCI up here is static and managed by Dome9. But once I clone it, now it becomes my own. And I can go and I can add and remove and customize rules as I please because this is now managed by me. And so now that I've got this bundle that I can get in and I can make changes to, I need to understand how to do that. And historically, when we're talking about testing rules against our environment for compliance or best practices, you've normally had to do this by coding. Might have to code it with Python, JavaScript, Ruby, whatever it is, your language of choice. But at the end of the day, it's an endeavor. If we have a bunch of different checks we need to make, I need to go tap my dev on the shoulder and have them build out all these rules. We need to have a single source of truth. There's only a handful of people that can build out this content. And so we thought there was a better way. And so for that, what we have is this thing called the GSL, or Governance Specification Language. And what this is the language and the syntax that's powering all of these different compliance checks within Dome9. So I clicked on that slider and I get these gray boxes now. And hopefully what's apparent is that we have really tried to make this as close to English as possible, but still do it in a way where we haven't lost that power that you need to create complex queries. And so what we can do is we can take this same sort of a syntax and then use this to create our own custom rules as well. So from here, what I can do is I can go to new rule up here. All of these boxes are all just free text, but then for my actual rule syntax, you can build it out in free text, but no matter how easy we like to think our language is, we realize it is still another language to learn. And so instead, the better and much easier way to customize or create new rules is with this rule builder. And what this is a way to get in and create different checks using this Dome9 GSL, but do it in a way where you don't need to know a whole lot about what you're doing up front in order to get the coverage that you need, because we're going to be able to pick and choose our way through these rules and be guided along this process, and have Dome9 take care of a lot of the heavy lifting and the syntax and all of those sorts of things. So coming back to something like that tagging policy that we talked about, I consider it kind of like the hello world of the rule builder, but it's a really important first step for pretty much anyone that we're working with, because it's an important policy that people need to adhere with. And so if I wanted to create a tagging policy for something like, say, data classification, what I can do is I can go instance, and I say they all should have tags. I see my tags with key equals data classification. All right, this is good, but just because I see key equals data classification doesn't necessarily mean that all my instances are going to be adhering properly to this tagging policy, because if I have a key of data classification and an empty value, then I haven't really solved any of my problems. So from here, what we can do is we can actually tack on an and let's say that I only want to see the values of the 3 data classification levels that I've decided are okay. Set up a little array here and say I only want to see the values of high, medium, or low. Click on add and close off the scope because it tells me to. And now here's my rule. And so now from here, what we've done is we've been able to customize this and add in this extra coverage for rules that I'm testing on within my environment that are still, in this case, important for my PCI compliance, but do it in a way where I haven't had to do any heavy lifting. It's guided me along the way. And now I can go and I can test this right from here to make sure that I didn't fat finger any of these spellings and that the results I get are what I would expect. In this case, I've done a terrible job of tagging this environment. I can click on expand, kind of get these sample results. But now from here, when I go and I click on done and I fill out the rest of this, again, I've gotten that extra coverage. And while this is a pretty basic rule, it was so little effort that, that hopefully kind of sets the stage for what you can do for creating more complex queries. Instead, what we could do is maybe we could say instance where tag or name equals bastion should have AMI equals 1234, which is my hardened image, and inbound rules only contain SSH to the world or something like that. All of these kinds of things we can do to get in and create this extra coverage for my environment, but it's such a low amount of effort. Throw that rule away. Okay, so from here, when I go and I click on this button, I run my assessment, which is nice. But again, as we've been talking about, just because I am compliant at any one point in time does not mean that today I am good to go. My environment today might not be the same as it was yesterday, let alone a week, a month, a year ago. And so for that, what we have is this thing called continuous compliance, which is sitting here in my demo environment and will be available to you by reInvent, so just about 2 weeks here. And what this is a way to get this coverage on an ongoing basis to make sure that things are configured just as well as they need to be at any one given point in time. So in this case, I've already got a PCI check here. So let's go and take a look at it. In this case, what I can see is I've got my bundle name here. Maybe this is PCI for App 1A or my overarching PCI bundle that I need to see. In this case, I've chosen, in this case is my pre-canned PCI bundle. I've chosen the environments that I want to run this against, which is really important because if you link up 10 accounts and only have 2 of them that are within scope for PCI, then you only want to get those alerts for those 2 accounts. And then maybe the rest of those other environments need to follow maybe something like CIS or my own internal best practices. And within this compliance engine, or within the continuous compliance engine, we can get in and really do some of that customization in order to make sure that I'm just testing the things that I care about, or the bundles that I care about for the accounts that I care about. And from here, the next step is, now that I've got this assessment running on an ongoing basis, that's nice, but if you still have to actually log into Dome9 every time there's a problem, then we're not solving a lot of these issues for you. And so from here, the next part is the alerting side of things. And so from here, we've got a couple different options of what we can do. First thing is maybe every day or every week, send you a report. Hey, here's the current state of this environment, here's what's okay and here's what's not. And you can pass this on to your manager or whoever it is that, that needs to be involved in making sure that things are good to go. Additionally, what we can do is, instead of having just a daily report, we can say, let me know if something changes. If I had instances that were configured properly and buckets that were locked down, and all of a sudden someone's creating a bunch of new instances without my tagging policies and buckets that have all of these permissive ACLs, those are the things that I want to know about. And so within this, basically it's going to go and send you that email notification to say, hey, everything else is okay, but we did find these two new things that, that are a problem. And then the last is SNS. And SNS is really exciting because email is good and a nice way to get alerts, but sometimes people want to go and they need to integrate with other solutions, or they want to drive more automation from this. And so from here, by using SNS, what we can do is, first of all, we can funnel this very easily into Slack or Splunk or whatever it is that I'm doing for kind of aggregating this type of information and notifications. But then additionally, the second part of this is, if I, again, coming back to this tagging policy, if let's say I wanted to kill off any instance that doesn't have a owner tag on it, well, if I have that check running here within this continuous compliance engine, and when I see that event, it kicks off an SNS notification, well, then from there, I'm one function away from building out that automatic remediation to do those more aggressive type things that you need to do to make sure your environment stays secure. So we're really excited about this compliance engine. It's going to provide our customers a lot of extra flexibility, and really, again, make sure that, that on an ongoing basis, things are as secure as they need to be to comply with whatever checks and frameworks it is that matter for you and your company. All right, so we've talked through Clarity and we've talked through the compliance engine, how we're going to customize some of these rules. But coming back to the slides, what we what we said is that this is good and this is important, and we want to make sure that this automation is letting me know on an ongoing basis how secure I am and that everything is okay. But just because I know everything's okay, or I get an alert that something changed, that's not always the best. Sometimes I don't want to have to go in and deal with a problem every time that one pops up. I just want it to be taken care of for me. And so for that, what we have are these two things called tamper protection and region lock, which are those ways that we can offer you some more active kind of control and remediation of what's going on in your environment, assuming we have the redirect permissions necessary for it. So let's talk through tamper protection first. Let's take a look at prod, Oregon. All right, so I have a security group that's sitting here in my prod account, and it's configured perfectly. I've gone through, I've spent the time in Clarity, I've made sure it is adhering to all my different compliance checks, and this is perfect. I've got just the ports that I need open, and they're open to just the different scopes that I need them to, nothing more, nothing less. From here, though, I want to make sure it stays like this, because again, if I add anything in or remove anything, it's a problem. So what I can do is I can turn on tamper protection, as we can see is already turned on right from here. And what tamper protection does is, when it's enabled, it takes a baseline of the current state of the security group. You see just these ports open to just these scopes. Now from here, on an ongoing basis, what we're going to be doing is pulling this security group and comparing the current state to that baseline that we took when it was turned on. And from here, if we detect any change in the security group, what we're going to do is we're going to automatically roll it back. We're going to alert you on that, and then we're going to log it as well. And so what this really allows us to do is it allows us to have these guardrails around my most important tightly configured security groups to make sure that not only have we got this locked down, that it's compliant and it's compliant on an ongoing basis, but if something unfortunate happens and this has now been taken out, I have the systems in place to deal with this without manual intervention. And so from here, the next part of the active remediation enforcement piece is a thing we have called region lock. And I consider region lock kind of like a super tamper protection, because they're doing very similar things, just with kind of different scales. So looking at any environment, kind of thinking to the customers that I've been working with, generally speaking, for any one account, we see 2, 3, maybe 4 max regions that are in use. And so what that means is for any given account, we have about 10 regions that should never be used. And if they have workloads running in them that are not approved, it's a problem. For a lot of our financial services customers, this can be a problem if they have data sovereignty issues. I can't have anything running outside the US, and so if someone's spinning up workloads in Frankfurt, this is a problem. It's going to be a problem for shadow IT, especially if I have a large engineering group and a ton of different environments. People love to spin up Alex test 1, 2, 3, 4 in a random region and then leave it, and it's probably going to be misconfigured, and it should never be there for a lot of different reasons. And then the last reason that I see people using region lock for is the unfortunately classic use case of compromised access keys. If someone goes and posts my access keys up on GitHub, and all of a sudden I have a bunch of GPU instances running in regions that I never look at, how do I make sure that I am notified of this and deal with this problem before I get a big hairy bill from AWS? So the answer to all of these questions is region lock. So in this environment, looking at my Tokyo region, I've decided nothing should ever be running in Tokyo. And so what I can do from here is I can go and I can turn on region lock. And what region lock does is similar to tamper protection in that it's going to be looking at the current state of this region on an ongoing basis. But in the case of region lock, if it sees any new security group, what's going to happen is all of those rules on that new security group are going to be automatically zeroed out. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to quarantine any new instances that are running in these unapproved regions, and then let you know about this on a in a very timely manner, so that if I have new instances running in Tokyo and I have I have this compromised access key type of an issue, well, now Dome9 is taking care of again, quarantine these and making sure that everything is nice and locked down. And then with this notification, now you can go in and take a look at these instances and do those more aggressive remediation steps for things like killing off these instances. Because while that is an important thing to do in this example, we don't want the permissions to kill off your instances, and I'd hope that you wouldn't want us to have those rights either. And so region lock is a nice way to add in these type of controls that we need to make sure that things are locked down and add this automatic remediation. But again, do it with as little amount of permissions as possible. All right, everybody. So that was definitely a run through Dome9, but within that, especially when we're looking at financial services and what our customers are using in this realm, it's really these things that we just talked about. It's getting into any environment and understanding what is going on within Clarity and making sure that that I understand what's going on and can start asking informed questions about my configurations. It's getting into the compliance engine and testing against pre-canned frameworks, and then being able to take those and use that as a springboard to add extra customization to adhere with all the different rules my environment needs to adhere to. And then last, it's that tamper protection or region lock for taking this beyond just an ongoing compliance assessment and really make sure that we've added some more kind of active guardrails around what's going on within my accounts. So with that, Val, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. Well, it looks like we've received a few questions. The first question being, what kind of permissions does Dome9 need?
Yeah. All right. Let me get back in here. So I'm going to talk through AWS, but the fundamentals of the permissions that we need are the same no matter what the cloud provider is. So there's a let's talk through read-only, and then we'll get into read-write. So within read-only, there are two different policies that Dome9 needs to present you all this data. The first, and where the largest amount of permissions come from, is the AWS managed policy called security audit. And then from there, there's a secondary policy which we call Dome9 read-only, which is basically a rider policy for a couple extra actions that are not set up in that security audit policy that we still need. From here, if you need to go and you want to enable some of that read-write functionality as well, again, the goal with what we need for this is really to give you the most amount of value with the least amount of permissions. And so to do things like be able to make changes within Dome9, to have tamper protection, to have region lock, all of these sorts of things, here are all the permissions that we need. Next question.
Okay. Second question, what are the next compliance frameworks coming out?
Yeah, absolutely. Currently within Dome9, the compliance frameworks that we have, besides for kind of an overarching best practices check, is CIS, PCI, and HIPAA. The next one that is coming out is NIST 853, which is a really big one for us, because even if you have another framework that might not actually be NIST, NIST by itself is such a big, kind of all-encompassing framework that that if you adhere with the NIST policies, you're really going to be covered by a lot of different checks as well. And then one more thing that you should be seeing shortly as well, beyond NIST, is actually a whole dedicated bundle for what is going on within S3. We talked about this a little bit, and the majority of what we need to do to make sure that my environments are secure is just that check that we saw within PCI, which says whether or not it's exposed. But what this S3 bundle is going to do is be able to, first of all, get a little more granular on where these bucket misconfigurations might lie, and then additionally be able to kind of give you a starting point for a lot of other things that we might want our buckets to be adhering to. Logging, versioning, all of these other sorts of things that, that can be very important for buckets.
Okay. And our final question is, what is needed to get this configured?
Sure. So see here, let's talk through what that means from a setup part first. So again, if I want to go and I want to link up a account to Dome9, again, in the case of AWS, this is done via cross-account role. So what I'm going to do is I'd create this Dome9 read-only policy. I would create the cross-account role, and then I would attach that read-only policy and security audit. And then from there, we'll paste the ARN into Dome9 with a couple extra fields. And from there, Dome9 has everything that it needs to start building out all of this content. And then once we have those permissions, for everything that we talked about today, it's all going to be taken care of automatically. Again, clarity is going to be drawn automatically. You can test through all of these pre-canned content automatically. The only thing that you would need to do to really bring this into your environment is, first of all, if you wanted to use tamper protection or region lock, turn that on for the security groups or regions that you want. And then lastly is obviously if we have any customization that we want to do on these compliance checks, then we would build those out. But pretty much everything that we talked through today is available immediately for you out of the box once you link up an account.
Great. Well, thank you, Alex. All right, everyone. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for attending. If you have any further questions on the information presented today, please don't hesitate to reach out to us via the email q&a@dome9.com. I have a few final notes. If you enjoyed the webinar presented today and would like to experience the Dome9 ARC platform for yourself, we are offering a more detailed, or we could do a more detailed personal demo to your needs. Our 14-day free trial is available through our website at www.dome9.com. Click on the Get Started button on our home page. Just register and a representative from Dome9 will contact you to schedule a demo or activate your free trial. Additionally, if you liked the webinar today and would like to hear more about the multi-cloud security solutions Dome9 provides, Please visit the resources page on our website and sign up for several of our upcoming webinars, or go to www.dome9.com/webinars. If there's a topic you would like us to discuss, please contact us through our website and let us know. With that, we thank you for your time today and hope you found the content informative. This now concludes the Dome9 webinar. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.